Okay, so welcome everybody to our first wellness workshop. So I had this idea come to me, gosh, I don't know, it was only just a couple of weeks ago, but I wanted to find a way that I could bring more value into our wellness club and into our community. And I feel like I am constantly talking about the same sort of things because that's what feels natural and that's like my wheelhouse. But I know there's just so many other topics out there in the world that we can all benefit from. And I have lots of connections from other virtual communities that I'm part of. So I thought I need to start bringing these women into the wellness club so that I can really share just all of the value that so many other women in this world have and can definitely start to spread their message. And it's topics that we all can benefit from greatly. So I'm really, really excited tonight to welcome Heidi. So Heidi and I have known each other for a few years, and she's actually one of my great friends. And she is a financial planner as well. She is financial planner. Is that right? Or advisor? Is there a difference? Advisor, financial. Okay, she's all the things financial, and she's also a health coach as well. So she is going to talk to us tonight a little bit about, which I find is really interesting, about why maybe a budget isn't like the smartest thing to do, and sort of some common pitfalls with budgeting. Also, she's going to talk to us about money mindsets, and I just find these money mindsets super interesting, and the more and more I keep hearing about them, like the more I start to understand them. And there's actually a quiz that you can take, and we'll share that link, and you can figure out which money mindset you are. But as she goes through the different money mindsets, you're probably going to be like, ooh, I think that one's me. So it's really fun to hear about that. And then she's also going to just touch on a couple other things that I'm excited to hear about, and then we'll do a little Q&A at the end. So I know Heidi's an open book, so if you have anything that you kind of want to bring to the table tonight, put it in the chat box. This is your chance to like ask her anything. So I am going to hand it over to Heidi, and I'm sure she'll give a little bit of a background story on who she is, why she's here, and then we'll just dive in. Oh, I can't hear you though, Heidi.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay. It's weird because okay, it doesn't matter. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me at your first wellness seminar or wellness club, I guess. Super excited. A little background on me. I spent 17 years in the corporate financial world. I put together amazing financial plans for people that included insurance and investments for their retirement. And then when it came down to implementation, the roadblock was, this plan looks amazing and great, but I actually don't have the cash flow to implement some of these solutions. So as much as I believe that I do need that insurance, or that, putting money away for my retirement is a really great idea, I just don't have the money. I don't have the cash flow. So I saw a real opportunity to dive into that piece. And it's funny when I give examples, a lot of my examples have to do with health and wellness. And I think that when we look at things like a budget, and maybe you can just type into the chat some words that come to mind when I say that. Like, what do you think of when I say the word budget? I'm really curious what you guys think. But it tends to be, exactly, diet. I find that it tends to be more negative in nature. So restrictions, nervous, exactly. So, a lot of people feel like you have to take things away, much like in a diet, right? And I don't agree with that approach. I kind of chatted with Megan about, she was like, so what's sum up what you do in one line? Like, oh, well, I kind of believe that, or at least my philosophy is that there truly is more to life than just counting calories and paying bills. And I know on the health and wellness side, we all know that about the calories. There's a better way. We don't necessarily need to figure out our calorie intake every single day, and we can still enjoy the foods that we want. I believe that also on the financial side as well. So what I thought I would share with you today is some tips around, especially now, right? Like we're all dealing with this pandemic. I'm sure some of you might be feeling a little bit nervous about your finances. Some of you may be in a better situation because maybe you're saving money. So I thought I would just go through a few things that you can take action on to improve your cash flow, and also touch on the money mindsets as well. So I'm going to share my screen. I don't believe I'll be able to see the chat when I share my screen. So Megan, if there's a question that pops up, just like wave me down or interrupt me. So that's no problem at all. So let me just share my screen here. Hopefully this works well. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yeah, looks good.
Yes. Okay, perfect. So I titled this "Thriving Under Financial Pressure" because I believe that that's kind of where we all are, especially in this in this pandemic. And I want you all to know that we're kind of, if there's one thing that I've learned about COVID-19 is that it really gives us an opportunity to look at our financial picture and look at maybe how we were spending our money. And it truly is putting a spotlight on the important aspects of where we're spending our money, and maybe some areas where, you know what, we actually probably don't need that in our life. So I'm going to touch on, as I said, the money mindset, some flaws that I find when it comes to budgeting and why maybe it's not the best approach, and really what you can do today to take control of your finances. So hopefully this works here. Okay. So some really quick stats just to kind of set the stage is, we're not taught finances in school, right? And I believe that it should be taught in school, although I might be out of a job if it was. So it's kind of like that double-edged sword. But I honestly I want you to know that you're not alone. If you've maybe made some financial mistakes in the past, or you're just not sure what to do, right? I just want you to know that you're not alone. We're not taught this in school, and it really is. If I were to blindfold you and tell you to use a chainsaw, like you're not probably going to be too excited to do that, right? But yet that's essentially what we do when we give people credit cards. Like we give you a license to maybe spend in a way that you shouldn't be, and you're not using the tool appropriately. Some statistics tell us that in 2019, 60% of Canadians are retiring with debt. So that's, a staggering number. And I suspect after the financial state of our world, I suspect that number will increase, which is sad. And it's something that I honestly think that if you just took a look at what you're doing and worked with a professional, you can really change the outcome of this. This does not need to be your story. If we look to our American friends, they have, so I live in Canada. I'm not sure where everyone's from, but I live in Canada. And in the US, the majority of debt comes from student loans. And it's been, studies have shown us that by the time a student or a person is 35, they've accumulated on average about $44,000 in student loan debt, not to mention any medical bills that might come up. So right around this time, many women are having babies, or, there's costs associated with that in the US. So it just really compounds the issue. So there's, it's kind of like, this is a little bit doom and gloom, but I want you to just know that there is a better way. Like this does not need to be your story. When we look towards budgeting, I think we're all capable of creating a budget. Like anyone can type into Google budget, right? And you would get a calculator, or you would get tools to help you. A lot of times they're free, which is great. And you're, putting in the numbers. And unfortunately, what a budget really does is it's more than math, right? If a budget was only dollars in, dollars out, so your income comes in and then your expenses come out, if that's all a budget was, we would all be successful. Much like a nutrition plan. If it was really just calories in, calories out, none of us would need to buy Beachbody, right? Like none of us would need it, because I think intuitively we know that, but what happens is human behavior comes into play. So your emotional eating, when you're looking at your health and wellness, that maybe plays a factor. Your social pressures of going to, like, having great intentions not to eat the cake and drink the wine, but then as soon as you're at that birthday party, everybody else is doing it, you kind of feel compelled to join in. And the same is true with our financial picture. We can have the best of intentions and say, I'm not going to spend my money on this. And then something pops up, or, you blow a tire, or the roof needs a repair, and just life gets in the way. So, the challenge with budgets is really, it doesn't take into consideration how we actually spend our money and what we choose to spend our money on. Mathematically might not make sense, but our human behavior kicks in, and helps to weigh in on that decision, as well as our money mindset. Okay, so some money mindsets. So what is a money mindset? Well, a money mindset really does drive your spending, your saving, your investing, and even your debt repayment behavior. This money mindset is formed in childhood, and it can be generational. So you might learn, your money mindset might even be an influence from a grandparent as well. And also it can be formed through any financial mistakes that maybe you made early on. Maybe you in university lent a friend a large sum of money and you never got it back again. You got burned. Or maybe you made an investment that just didn't end up to be a good investment and you lost money. That is also going to shape your money mindset. Now, as I go through these, there's 7 different money mindsets. As Megan mentioned, there will be a quiz so you can figure out what your money mindset is. But I want you to just, as I'm going through these, maybe jot down or in the chat, just put in what you think you are, because I always think that that's quite interesting, just to kind of think what you think you are. Now, I want you to also know that you can have aspects of each money mindset throughout your behavior, but you will have one dominant one. There's also no right or wrong money mindset. Like, one isn't good and one isn't bad. There's pros and cons to both, or to all 7. And it just really depends on what spectrum you're on, whether you're on the real, I'm very controlled with my finances, I don't spend, I save, all the way to the other extreme of, I don't. I do the opposite of those things. So there is a really wide spectrum. Okay, so getting into it, the brick wall. So a brick wall is somebody that is very analytical when it comes to their finances. They're leaders. They can be extremely stubborn, but very straightforward. They're very controlled with their finances. They typically are the type of people that will heavily research a product before they buy it. So I like to give this example, if they're in the market for a new car, they might actually know more about that car than the salesman that's selling it to them, because they've done so much research, they've done all the comparables, and they really just don't like to be told what to do with their money. Because they've researched something so much, they tend to be very confident in their decision because they've done all the research, they've done their due diligence. So if they've come to a decision, it's going to be really hard to change their mind. A brick wall rarely overspends. That doesn't mean that they're like cheap or stingy. I think sometimes we tend to look at a brick wall that way. That's not really the case. They will still spend money, but they will spend it in a very controlled way. These, like the brick walls, are most likely to already have a budget or some resemblance of a budget, and they also tend to be very good savers. Now, on the opposite spectrum of that, so those are all like really positive, right? But what tends to happen sometimes with a brick wall is especially if you are not a brick wall and you're married to a brick wall or your partner is a brick wall, they can come across as being extremely controlling around finances, and there can create some friction there. So especially if you're a money mindset that will see like a justifier like me, you can feel really stifled in a relationship when your spouse is a brick wall and vice versa. If you're a brick wall, you might be controlling with money for your partner and not even really realizing that you're doing it, not doing it in a malicious way. It's just something that is just innate. It's just a behavioral trait of how you look at your finances. Okay, the second one, the bunker. So bunkers are extremely careful. They're very grateful for money. They truly respect a dollar. They work hard for their money, so they really respect that money. They're extremely focused and reliable. A bunker, if a bunker was a bunker is normally somebody that, if you work in an office, they're the ones that are probably going to collect all the money. And you've like for an event, let's say a coworker is having a birthday and everybody's chipping in $20. You feel so confident in giving that bunker the $20 because they're so reliable. You know that they're not going to spend $5 on something outside of that gift. Like, 100% of that money is going towards that gift. They are not risk takers at all with money. They prefer to be safe rather than sorry. So therefore they value insurance more so than investing. They tend not to be big spenders, but they are extremely generous with their money, and especially during special occasions. So I like to think of a bunker as kind of like our typical, well, I shouldn't even say typical, but when I think of a bunker, I think of my grandparents because they grew up during the Depression era, and they really if a bunker could put money under their mattress, they would, just to keep it safe, right? But yet, from my grandparents, I always had a $20 bill in my card, right? Back in the 80s, like that, they were just very generous. So that's when I think of a bunker, I tend to have very fond memories of my relationships with bunkers. The justifier. So this is my favorite money mindset, obviously, because it's me. And I actually find a lot of women, at least women that I know, I don't know if it's just the attraction, but I know a lot of justifiers in my life. We're extremely non-judgmental when it comes to finances. So this would be like your perfect shopping buddy girlfriend, right? Like you are going shopping with this person, you're trying to figure out like, oh, probably shouldn't be spending this money. And then your justifier friend is saying, no, go for it. You look great in it. Like you'll wear the outfit all the time. Like, what are you talking about? Leather Crocs shoes, like stiletto, 6-inch stiletto heels, like go for it. You'll wear them twice a week, like guaranteed. So we very much justify purchases. We tend to be very protective in nature and spontaneous, extremely optimistic. We can be good savers, but since we can rationalize and justify so well, we can take something that's maybe earmarked for, let's say, an emergency fund, and we can rationalize spending it because, what are the chances that my roof is going to leak? Probably not very much. So I'll be able to replenish this before my roof leaks, so I can spend that money. So we can justify that behavior. We tend to value experiences over investing. Like we want to have that experience, and like if we're not going to see it anyways, we might as well enjoy it and have that experience of it. So a justifier can get into some trouble, obviously, with overspending in areas where they on more wants than needs. Okay, if we look at a dreamer, so the dreamer is somebody that's very entrepreneurial and driven. They can be impatient when it comes to financial matters. So if something isn't returning, like if they're invested and it's not returning their money quick enough, or let's say they're trying to pay off debt and it's just not happening fast enough, they can get really impatient and kind of abandon the plan. They can be risk takers when it comes to their finances, because they're so entrepreneurial in spirit. They tend to, invest money in, let's say, a startup company. And even though from everyone else is saying, oh, I don't know about that, that seems like a really risky investment, they have no problem with that risk. They're willing to take it, especially if they believe in it. They can be so passionate when it comes to those decisions that they make. A dreamer can sometimes overspend to protect their image. Now, that is not in a vain way. It's not that a dreamer is vain or conceited or anything like that. It's just that, for example, if they are investing in like a company, and that company is, I don't know, like everybody's driving a new Tesla, right? Because they're innovative and they're into like energy efficient vehicles and energy like efficient everything. Well, even if they can't afford that, they would also invest in that because they want to protect that overall image. And they're not worried about it. They're not worried about spending the money today because they know they'll be able to pay it off with their hard work and their passion as an entrepreneur. They'll be able to pay off whatever debts they're incurring. The dreamers have a hard time consistently saving, and mostly that's because of their impatience. Especially if they're not seeing those returns fast enough, they can, they'll kind of say to themselves, oh, well, when I make more money, or when I get to this level, then I'll save when cash flow is a little bit better. So that's a challenge that a dreamer faces. Okay, the undercover agent. So when I'm working with my private clients, the undercover agent is one of the harder ones for me personally to work with. And that's only because they're extremely private when it comes to their finances. They like to hold those cards really close. It's also one of my favorite clients to work with because I know once I crack it, it's like beautiful. So those undercover agents they will change the subject when money comes up. They just do not want to talk about money. They're extremely independent. If you have a partner and you're an undercover agent, you're probably somebody that does not want a joint account. You want separate accounts, and that's not to be shady or deceptive. It's just that you just believe that money matters are private and they're singular. This isn't a party here. We're not getting everyone involved to talk about our finances. An undercover agent can be extremely generous and social and hardworking, so that very, very positive attributes. And in fact, when you have a friend that's maybe an undercover agent and you ask them a question about maybe something that they purchased, they tend to downplay how much it costs or change the subject and not even tell you at all. So if you were like, oh my gosh, that vacation looks so amazing. Like, well, how much did that cost? They would downplay it a lot, or an outfit or something. Oh yeah, it was cheap. I got it on sale, even though on sale to them might not be on sale to you. So they can be good savers, but because they're so private with their finances, they might not be getting the appropriate financial advice from their professional team. So, and that's why I said, it's one of the harder mindsets for me to work with, only because if I'm recommending a plan for them and I don't have the full picture, the plan that I'm recommending might actually not be appropriate for them. So that they can tend to maybe get not great advice because of being so private with their finances. Okay, the masquerader. So, and this is a fun one for me. So masquerader, they're extremely intelligent. They can be perfectionists. So I have a little bit of masquerader in my money mindset. Perfectionists, they can be materialistic, but again, not in vain, more so because they truly value quality in a product and will pay for that brand name because they equate brand names with quality. They can be extremely confident and charismatic. This money mindset wants to see where their money is going. So they have a harder time investing or paying off debt with their money because once they pay off debt, like they don't see their money anymore, right? So they would much rather buy a new car or the big house, so they can see where their money is. They want those tangible assets. They don't believe that debt is scary, and this can be a negative thing, because if you're not scared of, and I don't necessarily believe that you should be scared of debt. I think debt, it can definitely be a tool for some of us. But when you aren't afraid of getting into trouble with debt, you can get into trouble with debt. So if debt isn't scary and you believe that it's temporary, that's where some challenges can arise for the masquerader. They really don't want to save their money. They would much rather spend it on something that you can see. So saving, getting them to save, especially for retirement, something that could be so far down the road, is challenging. And then finally, we have the optimist. So the optimist is somebody that's very kind and trusting. They're very easygoing and loyal. An optimist is best described as somebody that if I would see them, they would just say, well, what do you recommend? I'll do whatever you say because you're the expert. They just tend not to ask questions where they don't maybe understand the topic that you're talking about. And so where an optimist can run into problems is, especially if they're not trusting the right people, right? So they can trust maybe their car salesman, and that car salesman might upsell them, or same with a mortgage or any financial matters. So they could get into trouble that way, especially if that professional is a family member. They have a hard time with that. They can often overspend because of generosity as well. So they tend to be extremely generous. And because of that, they really like to give you, I like to say, one of my really good friends is an optimist, and I actually went to her house and stayed overnight. So she invited me for like this girls' night. We had no kids. And she invited me over. There was a bunch of us, and there's 5 of us, and we all she gave us a bottle of wine, but we're staying at her house and she's gifting us a bottle of wine. It's like, what? It's just she's so generous. She's constantly thinking of us. And so an optimist can be so generous, which can often lead them to getting into trouble financially. And because of that, they tend not to be the greatest of savers. Of course, there's exceptions to every mindset. So again, I don't want you to feel pigeonholed into one. So when you do the quiz, just understand that there's a spectrum here, and you probably have a little bit of everything, but there's going to be one that's dominant. If you're, for example, for the optimist, like if you grew up with a parent that was very trusting, and they always went to friends and family that they knew, oh yeah, I got a guy who's an electrician, and they went there, and even if the electrician wasn't the greatest, they took that advice, because I don't know anything about doing that kind of work, but you're my brother-in-law's best friend's cousin and I know you, so I trust you. So they can tend to get into trouble that way. Okay, so those are the 7 money mindsets. I'm seeing that there's some chatter happening. So I don't know if I can see it though. Let's see, chat. I think I have to stop my share to see the chat, but I don't know, Megan, if you want to tell me, should I go and stop the share and look at the chat, or?
It's everybody's just kind of talking about what they think they are and what their husbands are, and yeah, it's
okay. So what's
no
really
at all.
Okay, cool. So what's really interesting is, and this has come up a few times now, especially since I've been doing these quizzes a little bit more often than normal, is you might have when you do the quiz, you might be like, that is not me. Like, I am the complete opposite of that mindset. And then you're like, no, that's my husband. Actually, that's not me. That's my spouse, or that's and it's funny because we can actually, especially on how you handle your finances, you can answer the quiz, because the quiz is stuff like, when you get a mortgage, do you do XYZ, right? Like, are you looking for, I actually don't even remember the questions, but They're all fine, like in which scenario, how would you react in this scenario? And if you can actually take on the money mindset of your spouse depending on how you make financial decisions as a couple. So, if, especially like I had one that was a masquerader and a brick wall, so two different money mindsets, and they're actually flipped. So it's funny because because you make financial decisions, and if you're in a relationship, and especially if it's a healthy relationship, right? Like I think in the back of your head, you might not even realize that you're doing this, but you're making financial decisions based on maybe what you've done in the past, which can also include your spouse. So sometimes the quiz might be the complete opposite of what you are. And so if that happens, I would look to what is your spouse's money mindset. And then, so I just find that interesting. So that might happen. Okay. So you'll take the quiz at the end. I really think you should do it with your spouse as well. I think it's very interesting, and it can give you a little bit of maybe insight into what they are. So when I give you the link, there'll be a quiz, but there'll also be a PDF, and it'll list all of the different money mindsets. So you can really read a lot more of what, the 5 bullet points that I had here on the screen, but it'll go through what type of investor you are, what type of saver you are, and then kind of like your overall money mindset, which I find very interesting. Question I get asked is, can you change your money mindset? And first of all, you shouldn't want to, because it's like a behavioral aspect of you. Like there's pros and cons to each one. But the answer of this is no, like you really can't. Once you are in a money mindset, because it's formed in childhood, and in fact, the University of Cambridge did a study and it found out that your money habits and how you handle money is actually formed by the age of 7. So especially if you're a parent and you have young kids, it's a really great, something I talk about with my clients is, how do you teach your kids about money, and how do you talk to your kids about money? Because if you're constantly saying things like, no, we can't afford that, that might be the case, right? It might be that there's no cash flow for that item that they want. But what they're hearing is, maybe something I want, I can't have, and money is bad because that money should be there and it's not there. So why isn't it there? Like, especially if it's before the age of 7, they might not understand it. So one of the things that I work with is, kind of switching that language around so that we can't afford that negative into more of a positive statement. Like, okay, if you want that in a week, we can revisit it there, because especially if they're young kids, they change their mind so often. Also, you could switch it to something like, okay, like let's make a plan for, is this an item that you would like to add to your birthday list? Is this an item that you're willing to put some of your allowance towards? So there's ways that you can get to that we can't afford this, without usually using kind of the negative connotation that comes with that. But anyways, I kind of went off track here. Okay, so some things to look out for. How are we doing for time? 8:35. Okay, so some things to look out for. So there's a few things that influence how we handle different money situations and buying decisions that are really outside of our money mindsets. It's really that human behavior. And again, this is where I feel like the traditional budget doesn't address. And that's things like present bias. So it's looking at the value of today versus the value of something tomorrow. So if I were to say to you, Megan, would you prefer $50 today or $100 in a year from now? What do you want?
$50 today.
That's most people, right? Like we want it today. We're impatient. We tend to value things in the present more than in the future. So if you're presented with, and if I guarantee that in a year from now, $100 would be here with your name on it, you would still pick the $50 today. And that's just that present bias. What this can do is actually, especially now, right? And now if we look at our economy, maybe you have investments that have gone down. I know my parents are, my mom's retired. My dad is really close to retirement. He was supposed to retire this year. So, he's looking at his retirement plan and he's lost money, right? And so the tendency there, I think, is that logically, I think we all know, or maybe we don't, but most of us know when things are low and things are cheap, that's when you want to buy them. And when things are really expensive, that's when you want to sell them, right? And so what happens is when we look at our economy today and, things are maybe going down, the tendency might be to sell something because it's low and get out of that investment, when in fact you should be buying more of that, especially if you bought into an investment that is, historically has returned really well over time and all those sorts of things. So very, very interesting. So present bias is something that affects us. Licensing happens in our health and fitness world as well, which I think I have an example on. So it's kind of giving yourself permission to do something bad because you did something good. So in the health and fitness world, this would be, I deserve, we often use that language, I deserve this chocolate or this dessert because I worked out today. Especially if you're an emotional eater, this can be problematic, right? Because if you're working out 5 times a week and you're eating cake 5 times a week, like it doesn't really cancel each other out. This also can happen, right now. Like let's say you go grocery shopping for your elderly neighbors that are stuck at home because of what's happening right now. So then you feel like you did this good deed. So now you go and online shop to kind of reward yourself and, pat yourself on the back. And you might even be doing it without realizing. So it's giving yourself that permission. So hurting is another one. Hurting is kind of doing exactly what everyone else is doing, even though it might not be in your best interest. Especially if you're an optimist and you're somebody that tends to be very trusting with what other people are doing and the advice of professionals, it might not always be the best thing. And I give an example here is like, for example, right now applying for a mortgage deferral. So I talk about this in a little bit, but, a mortgage deferral is great if you actually truly need it, right? If you're in that financial situation where maybe you've cut everything that you possibly can, this is like the last resort to losing your house, then yes, a mortgage deferral is the right option for you. But just because your neighbor has opted for a mortgage deferral doesn't necessarily mean that you should, because a 6-month mortgage deferral doesn't mean 6 months. It actually could be closer to 9 months or 12 months that is going to take you to the true cost of that mortgage deferral. And that's because of how interest works and accrual interest. So they're basically taking the interest that you would have paid on your mortgage and they're saying, okay, you don't have to pay this for 6 months. I'm just giving this as an example. You don't have to pay this for 6 months. So we're going to take that amount and we're going to add it to the back end. We're going to add it to the overall amount of how much you owe. And then either you, look at your payments now could be a lot higher, but when you actually look at what is happening, you're now paying interest on interest because you've taken the interest that you deferred and you tacked it onto the balance of your mortgage. So let's say your mortgage was $200,000 and you deferred $3,000 worth of mortgage payments. So your mortgage is now $203,000. Well, $3,000 of that is interest. And now you're paying interest on $203,000. So you're paying interest on interest. And that can really compound. And depending on the amortization of your mortgage, you could actually be adding 9, 10, 12 months to your mortgage repayment. So it's just, I give that example because I think that's something that can, from the outside, seem really attractive and something that is relief. But unless you truly need it, it's maybe not the best decision. Okay, so what can you do now? If you are a business owner, keep selling your products, keep showing up, keep adding value. I think the tendency, especially in the pandemic, is oh, I probably shouldn't be selling now. It kind of feels like not great. But if you are a business owner, like please keep selling your products. People need them and people are still spending money. So, don't, as long as, of course, you're selling with integrity and you're selling value based, please like continue to do that. Um, you know, I truly believe that people are still buying, and I know I am. I know many people are, so I think that it's something that don't stop doing. If you have a financial plan already, please don't change it unless your goals have changed. So unless your goals have changed, which that's possible, right? Especially if we're evaluating what we, maybe that $10,000 trip to Disneyland that you were saving for, maybe now you'd rather spend that money somewhere else because of what's happened, and you just decide that, you know what, spending more time doing smaller trips throughout the year, something that I value more, then change your financial plan. But unless your goals have changed, just stay the course. Don't sell your investments. Like, don't do the mortgage deferrals. Like, just stay the course. Unless your goals have changed. You're going to do the money mindset quiz at the end. I've also included for you guys in the link just a really quick cash flow plan. So cash flow plan is different than a budget because it takes a look at, some of your quote unquote variable expenses. It's going to give you an amount that is just like a total amount, instead of here's what you get to spend on groceries, and here's how much to spend on clothing, and here's how much you get to spend on your Starbucks lattes. It's like, now it's all one number, and you get a weekly amount and you spend it. And when it's gone, you gotta wait till the next week. And it's funny because we do it weekly, and I get more in depth, obviously, with my private clients of how this actually works. But it's funny because if you give somebody a monthly amount to spend, on average, that monthly amount lasts 18 days. So if I gave you $1,000 to spend in the month, it would be gone after 18 days. On groceries, on clothing, on lattes, on getting your nails done, like whatever, it's just going to be gone. But if I give it to you the same amount, just weekly, so $1,000 divided by 4, so what's that? $250 a week. If I gave you $250 a week, that's going to last you 7 days. It's funny. It's the same amount of money. It's just how humans operate. Okay. The very first thing that you're going to do when you get off this call is anything that's in your Amazon shopping cart right now, you're going to abandon. You're going to save it for later. Same thing goes with your Joe Fresh cart and your H&M cart and your whatever carts you have open. You're going to save it for later, and you're really going to make the decision whether or not you need this in a week from now. Okay. So, I think it was Megan maybe that said this, that and I love this. It's like, if I save it for later, or would I still buy this item if it wasn't on sale? Am I just buying it because it's on sale? I think that's a really great question to ask yourself. So I love that. Okay. So once you go through your cash flow plan, like your cash flow, where your money's going out and how much money's coming in. You're going to identify any essential items and any non-essential items. So your essential items really are your, like the expenses you can't get out of, like paying your mortgage, paying your rent, the hydro, the utilities, right? It's all your monthly bills. It's typically the essential bills. I call them like the broccoli of money. It's like, you don't really want to pay it, but you have to. Those are really those essential costs. The non-essential expenses are your clothing, your eating out, your entertainment costs, and to an extent, your groceries. Now, I know groceries are essential because we need to eat, but I think if you were to look at how we shop nowadays, you'll find that we're actually going to, so where I live, I have a superstore, and at superstore, you can also buy patio furniture, and you can buy pencil cases, and you can buy toys, and I can buy a sports bra at the grocery store. So you have to really recognize, like when I talk groceries, I'm talking food, not necessarily all the things that end up in your grocery cart, depending on where you shop. So you're going to go through and you're going to identify those essential and non-essential items. Anything that's essential, so any of those fixed bills, we're going to leave them for now. But anything non-essential, you're really going to look to reallocate some funds. So now Megan's recording this, so she's going to have all these, so you don't have to like write anything down. You'll all have this available to you. You're going to want to look into any government programs that are available and apply to them. I know I'm in Ontario, and regardless of whether or not you have qualified for the child tax benefits, the CCB, I believe, now don't quote me on this, but everything that I'm reading and everything that I'm seeing is everybody that has a dependent child is getting $300. So it's not income tested. So that was kind of a surprise to me, because normally that CCB is income based, how much you get. And it's my understanding that it doesn't matter. It's $300 a child. So there's some extra dollars there, right? So you're going to want to apply for some of these programs. Just do a quick go into your provincial or state websites and figure out what benefits are there and just apply. Like the worst case scenario, they're going to say no if you don't qualify. But please do understand the tax implications. So talk to a financial advisor in your area, have that conversation. There's the Canadian Emergency Relief Benefit, the CERB, and that is a $2,000 benefit if you've lost your job or you've been impacted by COVID-19 in some way. It's a $2,000 a month benefit for 4 months. There are some qualifications for that, but what a lot of people aren't realizing is that it's not taxed at source. So what that means is that the government is not taking off the tax. You're going to end up owing tax on that money. So it's really important that you keep some of it aside so that when your taxes come due next year and you report that as income, that you have that money to pay that tax bill. And I think a lot of Canadians are going to be very surprised come next year's taxes. So please be aware of that. Okay, what else can you do? Meal plan. I don't know about you, but my grocery bill just seems to be like out of control. I have 2 toddlers, a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old. You wouldn't think that they eat a lot, but my gosh, these kids are asking for a snack every 30 seconds, it feels like. So we definitely are eating more than normal just because we're home, we're bored, it's available. So I would say meal plan is going to be, your grocery expense is going to be the biggest area where you're going to bleed money in your cash flow plan. But it's also a good thing because it's an area where if you clean up your grocery budget and your grocery amount, you can really make a big impact on your overall finances. So by meal planning, obviously everybody here is Beachbody customer. There's tons of meal plans on there. There's even this app that I discovered. It's called Meal Lime. It doesn't have like the container counts or anything like that, but you can figure it out. It's a really cool app. It's a free app, Meal Lime. And it has this like zero waste food plan option. So it actually, like if you've ever made a meal plan and it calls for like, let's say half a can of, I don't know, coconut milk. And you're like, well, what do I do with the other half a can? Like this is going to go to waste. So what this meal plan actually does is it will use all the ingredients that you have to buy, which is kind of nice. And so far the recipes that I've tried through it have been pretty good. So anyways, meal plan will save you. And also when you meal plan, like look to make new meals out of the meals that you're making. So something that I often do with our family, I don't know how I'm doing for time, but okay, a few more minutes. So I don't know about you, but for me, like if I make a chili, we make this really amazing turkey chili, and after, like we just make a lot of it, and then the next day what we do is we put it in a frying pan and kind of cook off the extra like sauce, and we put it in a tortilla wrap, and now it's burritos. Like throw some salsa, some plain Greek yogurt, it's like an amazing, some cheese, bake it in the oven, and it's now you turn chili into a burrito. So like find meals that you can do that with. Okay, so any bills that might have stopped, put that into an emergency fund. Unless you have 3 to 6 months of your expenses saved in an account right now that you could literally e-transfer to me right now, you need to do this. You need to have 3 to 6 months of expenses. I think if COVID has taught us anything, it's that, unless you're an essential service, you know, our incomes are very precious. And, I think it's really important that we at least can bail ourselves out if we need to. So you really should be looking at building that emergency fund to 3 to 6 months. It should be a priority. Oh, okay. Anything that has stopped, right? So childcare costs. If you had kids in daycare and now you don't, right? You're hopefully saving that money instead of, I don't know, blowing it at Joe Fresh, right? Like put it into your emergency fund or put it on debt. Your sports activities, any refunds that you're getting. If you had a concert that was planned in May and all of a sudden you got a refund back, you put that back on your card or put it in an emergency fund. We're not driving anywhere, so tank of gas has lasted me, and it's so unfortunate because gas is so cheap right now. But we're saving those costs, and normally I was spending anywhere from like $300 a month on gasoline. It's now that's an extra like boost to my emergency fund. Is there anything in your non-essential when you go through it that you can change or reduce, maybe even temporarily? So this is if you're feeling kind of that pinch, maybe your income has stopped and the benefits you're receiving, either maybe you don't qualify or it's just not replacing your income, then I would look to reduce or change some of those services, looking at your cable or your subscription boxes. It'll be a real shame if you end up getting a FabFitFun box that you forgot about and when you actually can't really afford it. So go back and look at the little money leaks that you might have. I know for me, I use my car for business. It's being parked in my driveway. So I called my car insurance company. I just asked the question. They were able to take the business use off of my vehicle. So I'm saving almost $20 a month just doing that. So, but make sure you're asking, is there any penalty to doing this, especially your cable bill? Let's say if you're locked into a contract, if you make changes, are they willing to waive it due to the state of what's going on? But those are all really good things to look at. And also, I think also as a last resort, if you had automatic savings coming out of your account, let's say to a retirement strategy or investment strategy, I would look at, especially if you're feeling the pinch. So again, I'll go back to what I first said. If you're okay and your financial picture has not changed, your goals have not changed, your plan should not change. Okay. So this is only for people that are feeling nervous, or maybe your income is gone or really reduced and you're just feeling that pinch. I would look to suspending your automatic savings again as a last resort. You could always pick it up again once things reopen and kind of get back on track. Okay, so now again, last resort, looking at essential services. So mortgage deferral programs, I talked about that already. Even credit card and lines of credit, interest deferral programs, really ask the question to your lender, what does this actually mean? If I suspend my credit card payments due to financial hardship, what does it mean? How much is it actually going to cost me? If I keep everything the same, what does it look like? If I continue to make my minimum payments, if I have to defer this for 3 months, are you now going to charge back interest? And then I'm paying interest on interest. So it's just really important to figure out what that is. A lot of times it's going to the cash advance interest rate, especially on a credit card, which is typically your highest interest rate. It's like 23, 24%. And I would hate for you guys to take advantage of some of these deferral programs and then realize oh my gosh, this is end up costing me a lot more than I thought. Again, last resort, if you're going to lose your house, do it. But I would say that it's definitely more of a last resort. If you have a great credit score and you can qualify to opening up new credit, I would say a strategy that might be beneficial is looking at a balance transfer at a lower interest rate. Again, if you are not able to pay that off during the the low interest rate period, typically what it will do is it will revert to balance transfer interest rate for the entire, like basically from day one, and it'll charge you that kind of back interest. So just be aware of what programs you're getting involved in. Personal loan and low interest rates are really low right now. So if getting access to credit is something that you truly need, now is actually not a bad time to do that, but just be mindful of some of the repercussions to that. And I would really talk to a professional that kind of knows this stuff. So those are kind of the things that you can do reactively, but just really quickly, the last few minutes, like what are some things that you can do proactively? So just like you can abandon cart from your Amazon and all your different retailers, is you can unsubscribe to any of your trigger emails. So your trigger emails are just like with your eating, right? Like if you're really triggered by the chips, don't buy the chips. If you're triggered by the 40% off coupon at Joe Fresh or Gap, and you end up going and browsing and then adding stuff to your cart and buying it, stuff you don't need, like if you're triggered by it, just remove it and unsubscribe. You can always resubscribe. I'm sure they'd love to have you back. Don't get duped into some of the online shopping traps. So these are, especially like the no shipping. If you spend a certain amount of money at a store, you get 0 shipping. Really just evaluate. Oftentimes I find that, let's say shipping is $10. It's really hard in that store, that online store, to find something that's $10. You end up buying something that's $20 or $25 that you probably don't need just to save the shipping costs. So, it's really evaluating spending more to save. You're not actually saving if you're spending more, right? To qualify for that free shipping. See if you can do a pickup at the store even. A little harder now, but something to look forward to. And then I think this is my last one is create a sinking fund. So really, really quickly, a sinking fund is essentially a savings vehicle that you have for any expenses that are known. So they're going to come up, but they're not regular. So it's not a regular, like a mortgage payment or a regular bill, but you can plan for it and it's going to come up. So a great example of this is something like a birthday or Christmas is another great example. So if you normally spend $1,000 at Christmas, like go and save the $100. Okay, let me get my calculator up. How many months do we have until Christmas? 8, 7? So $1,000 divided by 7 is $143 a month. So go and save $143 May, June, July, August, September, October, November. So you have the money for Christmas. Now, if you stop and say, well, I don't have $143 right now to save in my budget, then you don't have $1,000 to spend at Christmas. You don't have $143 now, you're not magically going to have $1,000 in December. Like, I think that sometimes gets lost on people. So create these sinking funds for your known expenses that pop up. If you normally, take a house full of kids to the Jumpy Castle for a kid's birthday and it costs you $500, well, you have a year to save for it, then save it for a year, right? Save that smaller amount is going to feel a lot easier, a lot lighter than that big bill at the end. Okay, so I think I'm like right on time. So sorry, I didn't leave much time for questions, but hopefully we can kind of get there. So a few things on the action list. So here's the link for the money mindset quiz. I can type it into the chat as well, so you can copy it. There'll be a cash flow worksheet in there. You're going to identify your essential and your non-essential. You're going to reallocate some savings of where maybe you're not spending, and you're going to put that into either an emergency fund or on debt. You're going to identify some areas that you can cut. You're going to implement some of those proactive measures like unsubscribing and abandoning carts. And if you are interested in more kind of tips, hopefully this is okay to share, Megan, but you can connect with me on Facebook. There's my community group there. And then I also have a website, rumorfinancialservices.com. Okay, so I am going to, okay, there. I can see the chat now. Oh, married to a brick wall. Oh, Michelle. If you need support, call me. I love this. Awesome.
Thank you, Heidi.
Very.
That was like so good. And for everybody who's watching, I'm gonna put like all of these links and everything. Like they'll all be sent to you, so don't feel like you have to like somehow copy and paste these links or write them down. I'll send everything out to you guys. The quiz is just so good, and get into Heidi's group on Facebook. You can even just like search it right now on your phone, fitness and finance, because she is in there all the time giving like these live videos about this kind of stuff, like such helpful information. And the reason why, like, I just think what you do is so amazing because nobody else is doing this. Like, we all have financial planners in our life, and we've all sat in those offices with people who are talking investments and RSPs and like all of these things that just like, oh, like just kind of make me like just want to like run out of there, and like I just hate talking about all that stuff. But they never ask you like how you're doing in life financially. Like they do not take that into consideration. Like, are you able to afford your monthly bills? How, like, are you able to save for that vacation that you want to take? Can you afford Christmas? Like all of these things that are so much more, beneficial to be having conversations around, instead of like how the interest rate is and like what's up, what's down, like that. Like if you're struggling financially, you need to figure out a whole lot more than your RSP plan and whatnot. So I think this is just so brilliant, and everybody needs this in their life. And Heidi offers a really amazing program and just so many great tools and tips for you guys. So get into her community because so much value is there. So I really appreciate you guys staying on for this hour or watching the recording. And Heidi, I am so grateful for you because I know that you've got a couple little kids who may or may not still be up and waiting for mommy to come and tuck them in.
They're not my problem tonight.
Awesome. Love it. Okay, you're like, I could stay all night.
Yeah.
But this is so great. So if you guys did have any last minute questions, quick, put them in the chat, or you can, just let me know afterwards and we can connect with Heidi again. But thank you guys for hopping on, and thank you, Heidi. And we will talk soon. Bye, guys.
Awesome. Thanks. Bye.